I guess the perception of stability is worth more than the actual dollar value now. So think about that. Credit locks up, but they need to keep everybody thinking everything's fine for as long as possible, while governments behind the scenes continue to accrue these different items. Do you think the ammunition shortage last year was just a random happenstance? Do you think this year's canned food shortages are just a random happenstance? Do you think also about 6 months ago, the complete buyout of all the long-term food storage from all American producers was just random happenstance? That's governments preparing behind the scenes, but they got to keep the perception of stability.
Interesting. Well, first of all, thank you for coming on, David. It's a really special treat for me, and I like your research and following you. I think that you have the tenacity that I think with many people that try to bring out the facts that you have to have. You just have to be tenacious. And hey, I'm looking forward to it. So thank you for being on.
Yeah, I've been watching your stuff as well, and you have a lot of really good ideas out there that kind of mesh in. If we're taking a wider scope look than just an individual, like laser point focus, it seems that a lot of what you talk about and a lot of what I talk about seem to sync together. And that's why I thought tonight's conversation was going to be just like nonstop between, ideas bouncing back and forth that are building off of each other as we move through the conversation tonight.
Yeah. Listen, I was, as you heard prior to coming in here, I've been giving some thought as we were talking about the world now is wired. It's literally wired all the way around, and how many other times. Fiber optics, I was just talking about that. I was involved in, made a lot of money in that market. But the interesting thing is that when you begin to look at entities, in my case, as I look at, we're in a physical realm, there is a ether realm, call it the spirit realm. We're all heading to there. That's the inevitability of the trip here. But I contend that we're not alone on this planet. I think that there is a much higher intelligence that is orchestrating so much of what we're seeing effects of today. And when I began to think about fiber optics, that's a perfect place if you're talking about light as a means of a carrier wave. I think it could be very well possible that you could easily have an identity attached to that. Just a thought.
No, I'd seen the episode where you talked about that in depth, and I thought that was a great analysis. And then I started thinking about that. And we're talking about an extra dimensional entity that is so intelligent that it had us as humans construct the medium for it to live in. And now we're coming into 5G, which is a much higher frequency that would allow that, what you're talking about, that light band or that frequency wave, to actually leave the medium of copper wiring, of fiber optic cabling, and actually come out into the air space around us with this frequency that we are creating for it yet again in a grid of frequency outside of constraints of what it's wrapped in these tiny little, fiber optic cables that you're talking about. But this next step into 5G, for me, is I see it as a control mechanism when the food riots come during this grand solar minimum. But at the same time, I also see it taking a step up and bringing entities ushering into this world. And I can go in a couple different directions with that. But when we bring this thing into physical fruition, I think it's going to be difficult to put the genie back in the bottle on that.
I'm going to, they're building, we found 3 now of these 5G. They're not towers. They're towers, but they're unlike anything I've ever seen. I told people yesterday, they actually have their own cooling system. They require a great deal of energy. When they're still installing them, the electric company here is putting in separate lines. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, this doesn't look normal. This doesn't look, it doesn't feel right. But so we're about to find out here. They said they'll have them turned on next year.
All of the towers require the cooling boxes. There's 2 cooling boxes underneath each tower. And from what I've been told, if even one of those boxes was be disconnected from its cooling source that the entire tower would catch on fire.
And I'm thinking the radiation, I don't know, maybe that I contend that that may be an energy source. The fact that 5G is putting off this radiation that we now, it's very detectable. But yeah, I'd like to talk about where you see things coming. My wife and I, we've been a prepper for decades. It's just, you know, call us the Boy Scout model, be prepared. It's interesting as I begin to see the futures, particularly looking at China, looking at what's happening here in the U.S. Crop yields are going down, and you see, what I see is eventually a complete collapse of the food distribution because of the growing ability itself.
We'd have to couple that with the economy as well. If there's a lockup in credit, then that food supply delivery chain is also going to cease. So we have kind of a double pincer approach in here, is everything that runs on this planet is revolving on credit. It could be a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day no out. But if that contracts like it did in 2008-9, what was one of the first things to go after the contraction started and the banks failed and things started to get pulled on the derivatives out there, and we saw those collapses across X, Y, and Z, commodities price crashes. Everybody lost their available access to credit. Now that was great for 2008-9 because that just affected commodities pretty much. But now we're coming into incredibly low yields, and I do think the USDA and other governments around the world are working in tandem to give the perception of stability. I think the monetary value of fiat or whatever might be considered monetary value is going to be reset in a couple of years anyway. Yeah, I guess the perception of stability is worth more than the actual dollar value now. So think about that. Credit locks up, but they need to keep everybody thinking everything's fine for as long as possible while governments behind the scenes continue to accrue these different items. Do you think the ammunition shortage last year was just a random happenstance? Do you think this year's canned food shortages are just a random happenstance? Do you think also about 6 months ago, the complete buyout of all the long-term food storage from all American producers was just random happenstance? That's governments preparing behind the scenes, but they got to keep the perception of stability.
Got a great aurora around you, by the way, buddy. So let's talk about.
You can see an aura around, huh?
Yeah, I can.
What color is it?
It's a beautiful light blue.
Okay.
Almost has more white to it. Yeah, it's quite beautiful. Anyway, so I come out of the financial markets. That was my background. I designed payment systems. And when I began to see in 2011 the monetization of our debt, the U.S. debt, and which has never abated, we're seeing the inverted yield curves, which are all saying the credit situation is off the hand. Now, they've tried under the Obama administration, they did a little three-card Monte game, is that, as you know, they took certain things out of the CPI and said, well, those things really don't count. And it gave the false appearance that the inflation rate had stabilized, which was anything but true. When I knew that we were doing this last evening, I was in the grocery store. And I find it remarkable now that in my lifetime, when I was 10 years old, a gallon of milk cost 25 cents. I was in the grocery store last night. It's over $6. Now, that's incredible. Then I'll just add one more thing. We saw this, Lynn and I did. I cook a lot, and I like peas. And when I found out what you were saying, and I told Lynn, I said, there's a connection here. All the peas literally disappeared. I mean, there was a shortage of them, still is, until we found out why. Do you know peas are the closest thing to animal protein that we can consume?
I did not know that. That's a great fact, though. Keep that in mind, anybody listening. They talk about soybeans, for one, But the peas, that's great information.
I did not know this. And so, yeah, and this is really the interesting thing. Almost overnight, some buyer, they don't know who, literally swallowed up. You couldn't find them. I mean, so yeah.
Now think of this also, when people go to start shopping this Christmas season, most people haven't come in to buy pumpkin mix since last year, or dried cranberries, or dried fruits that they're going to use in different kind of cakes and pastries and things that are, might roll out once a year in the kitchen. It's been a whole year since they went in to buy them last. So I would think that this year, in my personal opinion, that these prices are going to be double or triple what they remember last year, because when you're thinking about the food pipeline, there's an enormous amount of grains still coming through, because you can hold those grains for a whole year in the silo. Yields pretty good were last year, so they still had some left over. But when you think about fresh vegetables, peas, carrots, tomatoes, any kind of lettuce or pumpkins, you generally don't keep those for a full year in the pipeline. Like, you don't hold heads of lettuce for a whole year in storage and then bring it into the market now, right?
No.
So think about those things that don't have a pipeline, that are just beholden to this year's growth season, and that's it. So we're going to start to see, and we already are seeing shortages. I tell you what, every day I'm getting 3-4 messages of people talking about how scrappy the produce looks, or how small it is in comparison, or how tasteless it is when they take it home to cook it. Even it's small, scrappy, and it's still tasteless. So I'm getting report after report after report after report, daily coming through. And it can't just be like, wow, it's in one part of the country. It seems to be global as well. And a lot of people do right from the U.S. and Europe, Canada, etc. But I get reports from Australia, New Zealand. They're all saying the same thing.
And the trick, and folks, go and check your grocery stores and look at this. So how the illusion works. This is magic, by the way, because we fall for it. What they've done in cereal, and I happen to like organic cereal, the packaging is getting smaller, but the price is going up. So it gives you the illusion that, well, the shelves look to be stocked, but really they're dealing with reduced amounts.
There's a proper name for that. It's called shrinkflation.
Oh,
there's a proper term for that. Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, shrinkflation. I've done a couple videos on it, and it seems to be maybe the intermediate step between total shortages, where they keep trying to squeeze it down, like you say, the perception that there's still goods in the store.
Mm-hmm.
But I would ask anybody out there to please be mindful when you walk into the store shelves. Like you and I, we go in there and there's 15 kinds of canned fruits are also having a very difficult time. You can't hold fruit for a very long time in the pipeline either for produce. So take a look what's, sometimes they'll take something that's in stock and they'll spread it over the entire shelf just to give the illusion that there's still, something on the shelf. But there used to be 5 choices where there's now 1 choice of something because it's dried up, literally.
What do you see in your region of the world? I mean, because, the concept of the grocery store is now spread throughout the industrialized world. Are you seeing in the local areas the same type of decreases, I would say, in the food?
I always shop at the local market and I visit the farmers market, and I know the farmers around here, so I buy directly from them, or I buy from the wholesalers, or somebody there's a couple stores near me here where they contact directly with the farmers, and they have all the freshest vegetables there. They have duck eggs, quail eggs, or goose eggs, along with chicken eggs, etc. I like to go more to the more wholesale type of real healthy food farmers market. But I tell you one thing that's disappeared: pork has disappeared. And if you do get it, it's really expensive. You get a real small piece.
Interesting.
Yeah, the swine flu over in China has really put everybody off pork. I mean, do you really want to maybe take the chance of buying pork that's infected with swine flu? Hey, that's just so tasty. Wow, I'll take 2. I mean, talk about demand destruction. It's almost like, and if I could throw a story, can I throw a story?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
In China, they killed 300 million pigs so far. That's a lot.
We haven't heard any of this, by the way, over here. This is news to me. Okay,
well, let me run you through the whole thing, what's happening. The transition is occurring right now. So the swine industry was massive. I mean, huge in China. They were taking so much of the soy press cake and the, you know, the soy residuals and the soybean itself, the meal, everything to bring it in for food, and anything they could get, they were bringing in for pork production. Well, over this last 3 to 4 months, they've killed 300 million pigs. And some of these videos are so disturbing, I couldn't watch the rest of them on how they were killing these pigs. I mean, you know, and being a human and looking at how they were, just horrific. But what the Chinese government has done now is they gave the people a choice. The pig farmers had choice. You have to wait 3 years for the contamination period. You cannot revert and grow any, you couldn't bring ducks in or chickens because that can jump species. So you had to wait 3 full years before you could come back in production again. Or they had a turnkey system to bring in and allow you to start fish farming. They had all the engineers, they would come in and build it for you. They would train you how to, you know, farm the fish. They gave you the feed, gave you the meal, everything's free. The loan is a 0% interest loan. I think it's like a 20-year loan, you don't have to pay back. The pipeline's set for you for the feed to come into your farm, and they also found buyers for your fish. So you really are just, they needed your land to get the fish farming. Now you've got to think about protein since you mentioned it. Protein. If you can't grow pigs or raise pigs, fish grow 5 times faster and use 18 times less food inside that whole process to get out a kilogram of protein. So it grows 5 times faster and using 18 times less on the input. That's approximate for the input on that. Now look, this is almost as if it's a planned thing to not raise suspicion. Because if they start to tell everybody on the planet, okay, we got to stop the total pork production, grand solar minimum, every grand solar minimum, the Chinese dynasties have collapsed, and I ask anybody out there to try to disprove that fact. It's a fact, and I hope you try to disprove it, because you can't. No dynasty has ever lasted more than 400 years in China, period, and that's because they're on the grand solar minimum cycle of lack of food production, famine, droughts, etc., causes the overthrow, and the mandate from heaven's removed from the rulers. So then they change on to the next dynasty. Usually takes about 35 to 40 years. The riots come in. Everybody's unhappy. Emperor can't provide for the people. They're overthrown. It comes in. They burn everything to the ground and they start over. Takes about 40 years. Hey, that's about how long we're going to be going through this whole year too. Imagine that. So it's almost like the Chinese or somebody helped them engineer a virus, because that virus is really strange anyway. The kill rate was nearly 100%. It was like 99.9% kill rate. Now, nothing in nature does that. Usually there's a 1%, 2% survival rate on any kind of natural virus. But when you're getting this kind of kill rate coming through, nearly 100%, it's almost like it was engineered. And again, the whole stability thing, and again, you kill, the demand destruction happened immediately. Because I'm over here going, I don't want, you know, virus-laden pork.
Oh, yeah.
Back to the rest of the planet. That's demand destruction, instant demand destruction, wiping out the full need for soybeans. So now that China thought they had leverage on the United States, like, oh, we don't need your soy anymore, we're going to transition to fish farming. Now you can see where we are. Now the politics starts coming into the grand solar minimum with the economy.
You know, when you were talking about protein, I did not know this fact, but do you know what the rarest thing in the universe is? And very few, in fact, we've never found it anywhere else. Protein. It's only here on Earth. Think about that. It
was engineered from the beginning.
Think about it. Protein, you know, it's apparently Earth made only. So now see, I haven't heard this, because now pork prices, they seem high here, but you know, I never have. I'm going to look into this more. What we are seeing as well, because I watched this, is, for instance, honey. Now, back in the day, we have stored this. We have about 5-gallon buckets of honey. It's becoming much more difficult to buy, and it's definitely gotten very much more expensive. I see this as a part of this continued collapse going into this grand solar minimum.
Yeah, here they've come up to, now they're cutting it with high fructose corn syrup. So,
really?
Yeah, you know, buyer beware. A lot of cuttings going on at the moment, because the natural honey's just not there.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so what are they going to do? They're still trying to sell products. So I am very careful, and a few people who help me buy honey, we go directly to the producer. It's family, friends. They've known them forever, and
Yeah. We
You
have
gotta trust them as much as you can trust them. I mean,
yeah. Holy crap. And
yeah, the cutting. Again, Wayne, think about this. As we go down, the shrinkflation is going to only take it so far.
right.
And then there's going to start being the cut in the actual, they're going to fill it with something. And then what are they going to fill it with? That's the next question.
Well, here in the United States, I see we're in a very precarious position. We have homelessness on the rise. It's literally, it's a pandemic. We see the healthcare system collapsing under the burden of primarily debt, superinflation as well. And I have a family member that was a truck driver carrying long hauls over the road. And they're seeing some strange things. The agriculture is much more reduced in the freight. And I keep asking myself, so is there a correlation? I mean, if the truckers aren't hauling the produce and what have you, if they're seeing a reduction of it, what is that saying as well?
It's just not there.
It's just not there.
It's not there. Look, you can see it again from the very beginning of the spring. You know, the wipeout of lettuce over in California. You got the wipeout of the blueberry crop up in Prince Edward Island. You got wipeout of different kind of crops wherever you look. And remember, it's fruit and vegetables and berries.
Yeah.
There's no pipeline for those. I mean, yeah, you can get the dried blueberries, but look at the price of the berries now. I mean, it's exponentially risen. You know, you used to get a nice big bag, or even a little, you know, you can get a little container for $3-4, a nice fresh blueberries. Now the thing's at $8-9 for a little. Wow, why did that triple in price?
Yeah, yeah, and that's just the next thing to this. You said something that's really interesting: the high fructose syrup being mixed in with the honey. You know, I believe that the time is going to come. We're going to find out how much of that. And this is just my opinion, and I'll say why. Over here, diabetes is out of control. You have adolescent diabetes, you have children's diabetes, you have late-term diabetes for adults. And call me just a conspiracy theorist. Oh, that's right. If you're that here in the United States, you're that this is being purposely fed to the population. I think it's poison, to be honest with you.
I'll agree. You know, it's over here in Asia too. I mean, everywhere you go across the planet, that is in the food supply. Just, you know, it's in there. And there's
now
I'm gonna agree with you, because when you take a look at how easy it is to control a population that's sick, think about all what's in the water with all the plastics, and then with the whatever is the fluoride in the water in the United States. And now these new reports coming out just a couple of weeks ago showing that fluoridated water lowers the IQ in the fetus, and then after birth and then through life it has a lower IQ, the baby that's born. You know, this is real science. I can't believe they even put that study out. I was shocked that I read that, and it was from the American Medical Association about 2 weeks ago, and they had been pushing for 7 or 9 years to try to keep that thing shelved. Why did it come out right now? See, this is the things I don't understand, is everything has just been waiting in the wings. Like, we've known about all this contamination, everything for decades, plural, and then suddenly it's released right now. Yeah. Why is that? What's the thing about this year? There's been so much release of, you know, the inner workings of the elite and how demonic they are, and the practices they're doing. And now they got the fluoridated water verified now. It's not anymore. It was before, right?
Yeah, yeah.
5G, oh, wireless now, yeah. Mobile phones, they do have an effect on your brain. Oh, well, why is all this being released right now? It makes no sense. Like, why are all these reports coming this year? Unusual.
I did a video called Terraforming Earth. And David, if you step back and do the whiteboards, I have them all through my office. It's what I did. It has all the indications our planet is being transformed.
I'll agree.
And I don't think it's for us. I don't. And now I'm going to say this because I want to really be sensitive on this. Here in the United States, it's everywhere, but there are certain in the population that I have seen a disturbing aspect of what we're feeding them. Now, everyone here knows that most of the food consumed by Americans is highly processed food. And that contains exactly what you were saying, high fructose syrup in all of it. And the obesity, particularly as we're seeing now in certain, is, I can't help but almost think that these people are being almost targeted for early death by the food they're eating.
Right, but that an ill population is much easier to control than
Isn't
a
it?
healthy thinking population that is very mobile, and think about the strength in the body that could be a resistance force against something. And the terraforming, I absolutely agree. This place is being terraformed. But for what?
I don't know.
A higher vibrational frequency in the air so something else can jump into a physical form within a frequency grid? Or is it really another entity, like a physical, third-dimensional thing with walking legs or crawling, whatever it could be, to take form here and have a denser atmosphere, a more polluted whatever atmosphere? Something is very different. The way, just you can sense something different. It's almost like the frequency of the planet's changed as well. Because, I was talking to somebody about 5G, and I was saying, imagine if they put 5G in every single city, and it doesn't have to be the largest cities such as New York and Atlanta and LA, but everywhere in between as well, smaller second, third tier cities. And if they had all the frequency and all the cities across the planet all fired up at the same time, could that actually affect the vibration frequency of the planet? Now, somebody said no. But I was thinking, well, maybe on the thin veneer of the crust it could, but maybe further denser down into the layers of the mantle it might not. But on the very surface, in that one little tiny layer, it very well could. So something's being set for something else to habit this zone on the surface here.
As we were talking, I can't help the conversation that back in the day where Gordy Rose, co-founder of D-Wave Computer Systems. And he said when they had announced the breakthrough that they had actually broken through into other dimensions, and I quote, pulled substance back from these other dimensions into this one. He said that when they turned it on the first time, the quantum computer, he said it was as if they were kneeling before an alien god. Now, if we start looking at this, I contend, and it's been my theory, that on November 9th, 2016, the whole planet literally shifted. And I keep seeing today, it's like a bell that's rung. We're just seeing the reverberations, and they're continuing. Now, I could be completely off the wall on this, but quantum computing is real. They're now got quantum conscious computing. I found this out yesterday. I'm trying to determine what that actually is. But I contend, David, that there's so much happening at the same time. You can't tell me that this is randomness. I won't accept that.
Yeah, nor will I. CERN and that Hadron Collider as well. They had the reports of an entity appearing inside there as well, and then things running around and shadow figures and different things that just don't seem correct in our what we would consider perception of waking reality, that there was a shift in dimension on that as well. So think about it, it's happening in a couple different places. So with the D-Wave and with the new computing power coming in, and then also at CERN where there two spots are bringing entities in, and now we're getting the 5G network. It's all a little too coincidental that this frequency grid can hold something else in a frequency inside it with the up to what's at 37 gigahertz.
Mm-hmm.
We've never gone that high before. Do we really know what it's going to do when you start triangulating it in and holding the frequency pattern in there on not an area like this big or somewhere the size of a building like in CERN or even underground? We're talking about an entire city or bigger, an entire country. What can inhabit that zone at that point?
I know this sounds off the wall, but I could never figure out why Spielberg did this. He did a very B-rated movie called Howard the Duck, and you ought to go watch it because the premise of this was that we had used an accelerated particle spreader, and it opened a door to a new dimension. And now in the movie, they were called the Dark Overlords. And they were able to actually come in energy form, and that was their big thing. They had to find an energy source. And you ought to check it out sometimes. But watch it from the point that, could it be possible that at CERN, now there has been theories that when we opened those portals that first time, that they did say that there was something there. You know, it's fascinating. You're in Taiwan, and it's that the fact that the Chinese, these cats are doing some weird stuff over there. I mean, I paid to get onto the academic servers so I can read papers that are circulating in the academic circles. These Chinese, man, they're trying to really break this barrier of what they call the life barrier. They really want to capture that. And that's led me to a thought that as we see us entering into the grand solar minimum, our star, we've never gone, I think, through what have humans been involved in the grand solar minimums? What has that done on civilization?
Yeah, and these are really easy to trace back through history as well. We come to these apexes like we are right now.
Yep.
When the grand solar minimums come, we drop into a dark age. Because three things are going to happen as we move forward into this. And it's not about fear. I look at it as the greatest opportunity in human history because we're more interconnected now. We have more resources, and there's so much more with technology than we ever had before.
Yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. I have no fear. So it's an opportunity.
It is, and it's really the greatest opportunity in human history if you know what is going to happen. Now, is it going to happen exactly as it did in the 1600s, the 1300s, 800 AD, 400 AD? No. But it's going to be very similar. You're going to have some of these same things happen, and people are going to have needs that they need met. There's going to be constriction and choke points that need solving some of their problems. Population migration. People are going to start moving because power grids are going to start going down, or economic livelihood will be swooped away where nobody will have jobs. That's fine. Food prices are going to rise exponentially. That's going to draw from the greater economy because you need to eat every day. That's the problem. People, you need to eat every day. You can only come down to eating 2 meals a day, and then if you go below that, you get weak and sick, and that's where all these plagues came from. People just didn't have enough nutrition in their body. And then thirdly, economic contraction. Now, when I say economic contraction, I'm talking 90% contraction, everything else outside of food dying on the vine. Because you have a choice of starving to death or buying a new TV. You have a choice of starving to death or buying a new house, a new car, a new anything, or you starve to death, or your family starves. What are you going to choose, really? You're going to put all that money into food. So you're going to watch all this, larger economies go food, and everything involved in the vertical chain of food delivery, distribution, storage, warehousing, growing, and all these new mediums coming out, vertical agriculture and retrofitting shopping malls, building parking garages, caves like we're trying to do. And everything that requires electrical source into that, that's going to be the new gold mine and the gold rush, if you will. Food is going to be more valuable than energy. I can give you free electricity, free oil, free gasoline, but if you're starving, that means nothing to you. Nothing at all. You got to have food first because the society revolves around food. Basically, a country's wealth is truly its food production. And you look around the planet, there's only 8 countries that really have enough food to keep exporting to feed the rest of the planet. Almost every other country relies on those 8 countries to supplement what they grow internally. And I encourage you to do your own research to see which countries are most at risk. If the credit system locks up, they're going to starve. It's going to be like a siege where they're not going to be able to get food in.
Henry Kissinger, Houston, Texas, 1974, said in the forum that the future wars would be based on food. And he said the country that dominates the food will be the new superpower.
Yeah, look what's happening in North Africa.
Look at it, yeah. So let's talk about weather.
Let me throw one thing. That was the Roman grow zone. That used to be the Roman grain growing zone. And it looks right now that we're repeating a 2,000 or a 4,000 year rainfall recurrence pattern happening in North Africa. So North Africa is going to become much, much wetter, as well as the Sahel, all the way over to Sudan. That is going to become a new breadbasket for the world. And the reports and the numbers that I've crunched and talking with others, if they truly bring it out with primary water sources from Libya, and they put out the canals, that it could be one of the world's largest built-out projects for water irrigation canals across all of the Sahel and all of North Africa, it will be a bigger grain producer than all of North America combined. Because they have more sunlight and they have 2 growing seasons, solid 6 months, you know?
Holy crap. I hadn't even, this is interesting because that is geopolitically, that's a major shift.
Well, look, while there's unchecked immigration, they don't want the resistance fighters there. They're getting them all out. Like, go take boats, go anywhere else you can, because we're coming into the grow zones, and you're not going to be there. That's a one-way trip. Look how many millions of men have been extricated from that area. They're not coming back. This whole thing I've been talking about, you know, I don't talk about it too much on some certain channels. I just can't. But that is, in my personal opinion, why there's so much unchecked. They're exiting the resistance fighters out of the grow zones before the grow zones emerge as the new breadbaskets of the planet, which they're starting to right now. I give it another 2 years, and we'll start to see. Like, look at the desert southwest of the United States. Yeah. The North American monsoon shifting, and that whole area is becoming wet, wet, wet. There's all kind of crazy good stuff growing there. Oman and Yemen and that southern part of Saudi Arabia, the new intertropical convergence zone shift up there, 3rd year in a row, record rains. There's even lakes forming out there in the desert. Those camel and the herders out there haven't had to buy feed in almost 3 years. They used to have to go and buy, you know, the fodder for their camels and goats and whatever else out there. They haven't had to in 3 years. It's been a boom for the agricultural business out there. They got the poor, new ag zones emerging, and gee, why is the everywhere you look, Iran, Yemen, and then let's say talk about Iran and Pakistan and Afghanistan, all-time record rains. They had so much rain that they don't have records of so much rain even going back to the Silk Road trading days. When you think about that whole area becoming a new grow zone down there as well, we're really there to fight and energy, or are we there trying to get the food? Because like you said, whoever controls the food in the future will be the superpower. If you don't have access to it, your country, it absolutely implodes. You're going to turn it, it'll be worse than a third world. There'll be very few people left. You'll be starving. And starving people are unpredictable, angry. That's why I see the police state's been set up. Like all these things start to dovetail.
Yeah.
Well, who would have known the cycle was going to occur right now, and it's been taking 20 years? It just seems so normal. Nobody's asking enough questions, like why has there been a police state slowly dripped in for the last 20 years? Now when you start to see the grand solar minimum and you start to understand starvation, lacks, shortages of food, and angry people who are hungry that will kill to keep their family alive, you're going to need to control them. So here we go. Police state's already here. Imagine that. You didn't need to just come up with it one day. It's already in place. You know, there's too much of this randomness.
The thing that I'm seeing in, you know, the cosmic world, you know, as far as where our sun, we know it's heading that direction. But here's the thing that I keep on thinking as we've been talking. The increase of cosmic rays, I have alerts now that, you know, and you can see it now in the telemetry, it's becoming, every day it's increasing, the cosmic ray spikes. And they have found an interesting potential side effects for humans, because before, they never got down to the ground. They're coming now down to the ground. In fact, they say the Earth in Antarctica is actually emitting them. But it does something for us with humans. It drives us crazy. Did you know that? The side effects of this is the fact that it apparently raises anxiety levels in humans. I'm looking at this scenario, David. It's going to be a challenge, but I think it's one that, as you said, there are immense opportunities to help people here. New technologies. I think that there is the availability, but I don't know.
Yeah, if you really take a little further step back and you start to say, all right, if governments on our planet knew that this was recurring and that the actual real pivot point was going to occur around this time, 2020, 2021, how would you, if you were a global leader, try to get ready for your society without causing panic all the way through to this readiness point to right now when we really start to need to implement all of these things? And how would you keep your societies together? And now we got all this schizophrenia and the craziness. And if you haven't noticed, there's been a real uptick in the last couple of years. So
it's nuts.
Yeah, no better way to say freaking out. I guess that's the best way I can put it.
You know, I can't help but think, you know, as a planet, we are all one species, but something tells me, my friend, that the Georgia Guidestones are going to play a role into here, that they've seen this. And, you know, this is completely off the track on this, but yet it's connected. The United States is in, I saw that I froze. Did I freeze?
No, you're still there.
Okay, it's
oh, you're frozen, but I can still hear your voice.
Yeah, I can still see that. Isn't that odd? It's now I'm not even there. But you can hear me, right?
Yeah, you're still on the screen on my end. So you're
okay,
just frozen.
I'm just not seeing it on this end. So I completely lost my train of thought, David. There you go.
Georgia Guidestones. Georgia.
Yeah,
been there too, so.
The United States is in a rapid military buildup. We're stockpiling, and I don't know, call me just a little paranoid, but I can't help but not think that we're seeing potentially an alternative plan to help, how should we say, take out some of the numbers. Just a thought.
I've been to the Georgia Guidestones. You know, I went out there. They're way out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you got to drive like 2 hours off, you know, way out into the chicken raising country, and then it's way up on this. But I went with my parents. We were going out of the Atlanta airport. And I was going to fly out, and I said, "Hey, there's Georgia Guidestones. We go check them out." And yeah, my dad was like, "Yeah, okay, I've heard about these things. Let's go look at them." And when we got there, yeah, my mom freaked. She's like, my lips are becoming numb. We got to get out of here. I really feel bad. It's on a negative energy portal for sure. And I think that 500 million is after the chaos. I think they're going to, I don't know if they're going to pull the triggers and line people up against the walls, but we're sure not being warned about this grand solar minimum. So is it they're going to let nature take its course? By not warning us, and then whoever's left over at the end, you're the ones who are supposed to survive anyway, because you were the preppers. You're the ones that saw through the BS and the brainwashing about CO2. And the people who are going to survive are the ones who are going to be ingenious enough to start to come up with solutions on their own outside a centralized system. It's going to be like a DIY society where everything is going to be in flux. And if you can get through that, provide your own solutions. Still, you're going to have to work in groups. You're not going to survive on your own. So imagine a whole community of these people, like the DIY, they can make their own. They made their own medicines, their own foods, their own whatever. They're working together in communities, and they're prepped before because they didn't fall into the brainwashing. So perhaps that's kind of the person I would want to restart the society as well.
Yep.
Would you let it just naturally occur and let it happen, and then whoever's left over, those were the ones to pass through the tribulation, if you will? It's kind of the way I'm looking at it. Is after that 500 million, they're going to cap it at that point. You know, whoever's left, that'll be around 500 million, maybe a billion. You know, when we started all this talk about, I envisioned, you know, a loss of 2 billion, but the more we talk about it, these numbers are ridiculous now, because nobody's prepping, no governments are warning anybody, so at least half of the world's population is not going to make it through. So what's not to say that, but, you know, with all the, we're not prepared, we don't know how to repair anything, we just don't know how to do much, and everything's so divided. Perhaps it'll be 3/4 or even more loss.
Well, I have a book that I wrote called The Start End on defense1.com. Check that out. It's a good website to get good intel. But they had a whole article on this new trend now of weaponizing bio. And I can't help but not think that the potential pandemic situation would be a very, how shall we say, no blood on my hands, so to speak. But look what happened. Oh, we lost 2 billion people. Well, damn.
Well, you can see how that would sweep through so quickly. If people are malnourished and their immune systems are depleted because they don't have enough food, and look through history, every time this happens at a grand solar minimum, plague comes along. They're definitely intertwined. It's all about nutrition. So, you know, I'm always looking at superfoods. Like, can you grow algae? Can you make your own small raceway pond just for your home? Can you grow moringa oleifera? You know, that's another superfood tree that grows really fast in warm climates. They call it the miracle tree. So I'm really superfood focused, like goji berries. Those are really easy to grow as well. anything that can keep your nutrition up and superfood nutrient coming in.
Excellent. Excellent. This is cool stuff, because this is where I see the counter of it. And when we talk about this in the 16th century, I mean, isn't that when we begin to enter into, I guess, the last mini ice age? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. 1640 was the official start for the Maunder minimum. And then we can trace back, and to go back in time, and you start to get these marks. 1200 AD, Yuan dynasty collapses in China. Well, look at what happened in Europe as well, entering in from 1200 to 1300 AD. I mean, geez, we talk about plagues again, Black Death running all over the place. Sasha Dobler does a really good job to talk about Black Death and plagues in the 14th century. He talks into the same grand solar minimum reasoning for it. He goes into the myths about arrows from the sky and cosmic bombardment and galactic cosmic rays causing insanity in the society.
I'm telling you.
Drop back to the Tang Dynasty, 800 AD. Same thing. Wherever you look across the planet, it doesn't matter what society you're in. It doesn't matter if it's emperors, if it's kings and queens, or whatever it might be. Everybody gets the same effect.
This is phenomenal, David. You've given me enough ideas on this one, because it actually begins to correlating in everything that you see. As I see Congress here, I see human beings that should be well educated. They should have a logical part of cognitive understanding, but we're seeing it break down in. I have friends that are in law enforcement, and one's a woman and several are men, but they report to me that they said the public doesn't understand. It's really, as the one gal said to me, she says, Wayne, virtually everyone that we pull over, they're crazy. They're crazy. Is what she says. She says it doesn't make any sense. They become combative. And anyway, I just see this as a continue. Now, you're overseas. Do you see it over there? Is there this level of anger or confusion, or just the inability to cognitively think? I mean, Hong Kong right now
is off the hook, and everywhere you look as well in Asia, people going on in the Philippines. Everybody's frantic down in the Philippines about that. Got Hong Kong clearing off. The king, down in Thailand died, and then his son took over, and then he's ill in health as well. So they got a whole transition of possible military in there. Vietnam's not doing so well. They're trying to transition the economy. A lot of anger and animosity because the split between the haves and the have-nots is going like that. There. So everywhere you're looking around Asia, India is having a very difficult time with its food production. A lot of people are talking about rights in India. The caste system is outdated. So we're starting to get what we start to see in every grand solar minimum as well. It's this throw off of the reins of like these old paradigms or the hierarchies of things that would keep our society set in the strata. So, I mean, just in these countries in Asia right now is what we're seeing over in Xinjiang, where they're really rounding those people. There's no AOC BS, get arrested coming over the border, they put you in a place where you have air conditioning. We're talking about real places where they execute people and put them into such horrendous brainwashing conditions that they literally snap and go insane and they don't come back out. Like they're shaking and functioning at this point where they snap their mental, they put them in such a duress situation that they're mentally impaired for the rest of their lives. Those camps. That's Xinjiang. Again, another growth zone emerging. And I look at it and I'm thinking, all right, Xinjiang is going off where it's coming into a 2,000-year rain cycle. Rivers are running there that haven't run in 2,500 years, 2,000 years. It's becoming a new growth zone as well. But the Uyghurs are going to want that growth zone.
Yeah.
China's here preemptively getting them in camp so they can't say anything. And when it starts raining, which it is already, they're starting to grow crops, then it's Chinese food growth zone. It's not a Uyghur food growth zone. It's a Chinese food growth zone. You got too much geopolitics and these new rain areas forming, and
we are living in a time, David, like, wow. I mean, we've been gone way over. I haven't even seen the chat room. I've been so engrossed in the conversation. Got a full people in here, and I think that people are really seeing what's happening. And folks, we're not promoting fear here. What we're just trying to say is that these are the facts. These are not made up. They're not hyped. this is the changes that are taking place, David. And as we get wrapped up, I have to get going myself. What do you see, David? I'd like to have you back on, number one. Love to be on your channel. But what do you see coming down, let's say 10 years down the road? In 10 years, we'll be in 2029.
The first thing I'm going to say is it's not fear. You have to find your opportunity. Now, all of what we spoke about tonight, where do you see the opportunity in that? Don't come at it from fear. Think about, wow, a lot of people are going to have a lot of problems that are going to need solved. Like, how can I solve their problems and give the most value to help the most amount of people at this time in your existence and our existence? That's what the way you need to be thinking is, how can I help the most people that will provide the most value, that in turn, protection, food, and enough wealth and resources will come back to me that we don't need to worry about any of the tumultuousness out there in la la land, if you will. If you think that way, you'll be well protected and you will be taken care of. I assure you, you will. Now, when we march forward, this is my timeline, and I've kept this timeline since the inception of my channel, and I shall continue this timeline. This whole year, we're going to have terrible grow conditions. So the prices are really going to rise at the end of the year, especially around Christmas, New Year's, Hanukkah, and all these festivals at the end of the year. Well, when we get into that, people are going to notice the price rises, and maybe they'll talk at the dinner table like, hey, something doesn't seem right. But as we go into next year, 2020, you're definitely going to see more crop losses, colder conditions. They got the coldest. They haven't seen this much cold in cans up in Australia since 1953. It's the coldest it's been. Now, when we come into 2021, this is going to be the great awakening, in my opinion. So as we sit here today and talk about this on the channel, everybody on the planet will know what we're talking about. In earnest, they'll be like, well, those guys were 2 years ahead of the curve there. 2021, the whole world wakes up, and this is where the shift starts to occur. Everybody's going to want the same supplies to prepare at the exact same time. Yeah. So the first, I think, shocks, I think the economy will have very much difficulty long before this. That'll explain away the supply chain disruptions. There's always got to be an excuse for why something's not working right. So if there's a contract, and I'm saying that economy is going to be self-imploded on purpose to stop the population migration, because you can't have 5 billion people, 8 billion people wandering across the planet to new places where they know it's going to be warmer, where they can grow food. They're going to blow up the economy on purpose to stop you. Now, I've always said, when this massive, massive contraction, like new Great Depression, comes in, that you have 1 year left before the full-on food shortages start, because that's your marker in time that they're going to lock down the planet so you can't move. And then you're, okay, that's fine. Then you understand that. You're stuck where you are, and most people are going to be locked in where they are. Then the food's going to get really expensive. So our whole thing with timelines and all the people that I talked to in this whole space here, 2023, 24 are when this is when the police state's really going to be needed, because people are going to, maybe even 22. Valentina Zarkova and her whole analysis of what's happening with the sun, as well as John Casey and quite a few others, are saying, by the time we roll around 2028, we're going to be growing a fraction of what we produce today. There will not be anywhere close to being enough food for this planet unless we start to really come up with a lot of creative solutions and work together to get through this, to be able to build new solutions with our better tech to start producing enough food that will feed the planet. Now, there's this greatest need ever in human history. There's more people and everybody eats. We need solutions to still feed 8 billion people when nature stops providing its growth and its nice conditions for us to grow food. The temperate seasons, we understand, you plant at this time, you harvest at this time, that's already going out the window. The seasons are going to be much shortened, and they're not going to be as stable. We're not going to know when to really plant and harvest, because it's like we're already seeing snows in August up in British Columbia. We already saw snows across Russia in August. We saw freezes, frosts. This is not normal. This is the indication that we're already getting into these unstable growth seasons. So as we get out to 2029, I really hope as a species we come together to work together to find solutions for this is the biggest problem in human history. This is why I really devote all my time to doing it. There's nothing else left on this planet to even work toward except solving all these problems. This is really why I do what I do, because money is going to be meaningless.
Yeah.
Meaningless.
Yeah. Yep.
So where's the value you can provide? Think about that, and thanks for your time.
Well, you know what? I'll just add a little bit to this, folks. And here's just a little thing. Think about buying nails. Think about buying rope, things that you would not normally think that you would need. But we're talking about a reset. And It's happened before, David, and I think it's going to happen again. I do.
Yeah, look back in history at what were the most tradable items. And one thing, I wrote a new book called Climate Revolution, and we talk about these very same things. I outline everything with my co-author, Bill Porter. The first half of the book is what we just talked about in a written form for 120 pages. The last half of the book is about all the solutions, like how to build a greenhouse. We've got all the design plans in there for everything, X, Y, and Z you could think of. And we hyperlink everything out, so if you want to do more research, you click and it takes you out to the PDF on engineering diagrams to do X, Y, and Z.
Excellent. But, now, is that on Amazon? Where can people buy that?
It's not. We self-publish. It's available through KIP, and I can send you the link.
Please do. Please do.
Yeah, but inside the book, what we found was there's something you have to look at called, please look this up, Google it, or DuckDuckGo. I prefer for my search engines. I don't like Google. Yep. But A Year in Hell. This is the account of the Bosnian War for the 1 year when everybody was locked down, actually a year and a half, of what were the most valuable traded items, what ran out first, and how much they were caught off guard. Once you read this account, it will shift the way your perception is of what you need to prep for.
Excellent. Excellent. Will you come back on, David?
Yeah, and I'll have you on as well, and we can just keep this discussion going.
I love that.
Next time we talk, 1,000 new things will have happened.
Let's do that. Folks, I know we went over, but I wanted to get a full hour in the conversation. Thank you and man, there's still a full chat room in there. So, folks, we got places that go. So, David, stay with me as I log off. Thanks, everyone. David's contact in his YouTube channel is down there. He's going to send me the link to the book. I'll update that there. And folks, have yourself a great, strong end of the week, and we'll see you all again on Monday, it looks like. All right, folks, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you, David.